Hi, Joe Cerrone.
And Alan Rosen.
Welcome to CAD 107, Introduction to 3D Printing, in our weekly Zoom classroom meeting. Alrighty, so we've released our last lab, which is going to be this ring module. And what we're going to require is 10 labs from our students in the course.
Hey, Joe, why are we asking for 10 only? Can they do 11 if they want to?
You bet. You can do more projects. We've been developing the course over the years. And so we do have some projects that students can work as bonus if they would like to do more projects. But as we take a look at the projects, we'll take a look at our outline of topics. Today's the 29th, and we're at lab 11. And I realize it says lab 10, but we need to complete 10 labs. And essentially what we're doing is we're following our outline of topics. If we take a look at our outline of topics, I'm going to bring this back. We'll talk about that a little bit. So this will be our last project, and this will be our ring project. And so you'll need to complete 10 labs. And then you'll also need to complete the review questions. And so the review questions are available under quizzes and exams. And so here are the chapter review questions. You can use your book, you can use open notes. The content that we covered was chapter 1, chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 14. Those are the 10 chapters that we felt had the best content for our theory for 3D printing. We've also released the practice test. The practice test is available today up until the 13th. So as we look at our calendar, we're following through color-coded. Labs are green, reading materials are blue, and then tests are in red. Next week, we'll make the final exam available, and you'll have a week to complete that. It needs to be done on the 13th, and it will use Honor Lock. You can take the practice test as many times as you like. The practice test will consist of questions from the chapters as well as chapter questions from the review questions. If you have any questions about the tests or about the curriculum, please email us. The course has gone well as we go through and we work with these different projects. Here's our project 10. We take a look at the projects in our content area. This is our last project, and we've made some great videos showing how to do dual extrusion if you'd like to. You don't necessarily have to use dual extrusion, but we've made these videos since this is an asynchronous course so that students can find out how these technologies work. And then we go through and we analyze these different projects, and then we can see what the technology is really like. If we look at the projects that we've covered in our outline of topics, we started with lab number 1, and we made our sign, and then that was our Zoom meeting in progress sign. And then we continued on with these other lab projects. And so as we completed these different projects, then we tied those to the review chapters. And so the chapters and the questions are all listed out here in the outline of topics. And then here's our projects. And so here's our lab 1 project, lab 2, 3, 4, Project 7 is a project that students can complete as a bonus project. Or like we said, as long as you complete 10 projects. Lab 8, we introduced dual extrusion. Lab 9, we also talked a little bit about dual extrusion, but we looked at actually customizing some of our design work as we learned to design for 3D printing. Vase mode is another important concept. And then our last project. What's that, Al?
What's so important on all these projects?
Well, I think what we're doing is we're following the textbook and we're using the examples that they work through in the projects. And so, for example, if we were looking at our lecture on special geometries, the textbook talks about vase prints and how to use spiralized outer contour and how to work with dual extrusion. And so what we're doing is tying in these different concepts, things like overhang allowance, build plate adhesion, spiralized outer contour type projects. So we're in the mechanical design program, and it's a mechanical design, how to design for 3D printing, introduction to 3D printing. If we take a look at our projects, here's one of our projects, and we're going to take that out of the box. And so we're using a Dremel 3D45. Here's an example of our teacher model. And you can see we're adding the oak leaf to it. And students can do that. And so, as we talk about how to enhance and improve your projects, we're doing things like dual extrusion, and then we're looking at our dual extrusion projects. And so as we look at things like making the owl logo or making the oak leaf logo, these can be used very easily to enhance your projects. The other thing that we want to do is we want to make sure that we're designing for 3D printing. And so as we go through and we start to work with things like being able to measure and create accurate drawings, that's essentially a component of our mechanical design. And those are the employable skills that we're looking at as well. And so as we start to work with these projects, we have a certain vocational aspect to them. And then as we look at the projects like this one that we've just printed, and so this one came right off the plate. I didn't even need to use a tool to remove it. But as you can see, one of the things that we like to talk about is some of the problems that we have. And so as we create and work on these projects, we've used build plate adhesion to make sure that we get a good build. And then we have also used support material. And then we can remove that support material. And we can work on what would be called post-processing of our files. And so we talked about different tools that we'll use for 3D printing. And so some of the tools that we talked about, you can get on Amazon from our Filament Friday. But essentially, we want to be able to have these different tools for removing the support material. And for right now, I'm just going to use these wire cutters. We also want to be able to emboss or be able to identify our projects. And so as we start to work with these projects and design, you're allowed to improve them and continue to work with them. But we also want to look at what are the results that we get? What's the finish quality on the top versus the bottom? Do the parts fit together? And we're pretty close on this. This could be fixed with a little bit of sanding. But essentially, the first one is always the hardest. And then if we look at some of our other projects, we have a number of projects. So here's our chip clip. Here's our memo pad holder. Here's an example of using support material and embossing. And so we'll use 3D Builder to emboss. We've also done work with creating inserts, where we'll print a project using inserts versus a project using dual extrusion. And what is the difference as we look at those different projects, and how much time does it take to create those projects? So as we continue to work on these different projects, what we want to do is to be able to complete our 10 projects. The projects cover the chapters in the outline of topics. We've covered 10 chapters. If you take a look at the outline of topics, you can see the reading materials. We've released the practice exam under quizzes and exams. And next week, we'll enable the final exam. You're allowed to use your books. You're allowed to use your notes. You can add pictures and hyperlinks and other materials to explain your knowledge of the 3D printing process and the chapters. And then make sure that you complete your projects.
Can you also use a computer, Joe?
Yes, they can.
Oh, great.
And I think that's really the way that the educational field has changed to these kind of flexible modes. As we have all these tools, people are using them on the job. People are using their cell phones. People are allowed to do that. And we're moving along and progressing in that nature. Al and I have really enjoyed teaching the course. Make sure you stop by and say hello, pick up your projects. Remember that we broadcast live from the Skokie campus, and you're welcome to come in and work on hands-on projects during that time.
Hey, Joe, if they're running trouble and they have to be extended, is there a way we can extend them time?
Yeah, if you have some difficulty completing the material, be sure to email us prior to the 13th and request an extension. If you can't finish all the materials, you can get an extension, but we do have to have Dean's approval for that project. All righty then. So with that, I'm going to end this Zoom recording and open things up for questions. Next week, we'll have the final exam active. And remember, if you have any questions or concerns, you can email us and set up an appointment to talk to us about your projects. With that, I'm going to stop the recording and open things up for questions.
Have a nice time.